Okay, today I want to introduce us into this concept called daylighting. If you've been in some of my workshops where I talk about trauma or triggers, moving through some of these points of healing that show up in our leadership, you might hear me talk about this concept of daylighting. So, what is daylighting? It's actually a restoration, ecological restoration process. So, when we build cities, when we pave streets and whatnot, what usually happens is that we're building on top of natural creeks and rivers and water pathways, right? So if you come across this part of maybe your city or a developed area, and it tends to have this pool of water, even though there hasn't been a storm, or there's no reason why there is like a puddle of water at this corner, chances are that there is a naturally occurring stream or creek buried underneath there. And what's happening is that it just keeps coming up over the concrete because you know how water behaves. Water is really hard to control. It's a fluid thing, and water is going to do what water does no matter what. Even though we build these things on top of water or dam it, right? It's such a powerful element that it could cause destruction. And so that's what's happening when you're seeing these areas of your city where there's always just this puddle of water. You just want to bet that there's something underneath there that's still naturally flowing. So in daylighting, this is a practice in urban areas that have creeks buried underneath. And this is happening in places where we're trying to reclaim green spaces or beautify parks that have been once covered over with concrete. So urban ecologists will go in and chip away at this concrete, and daylighting meaning that we're allowing this naturally flowing body of water to see the light of day again. And this is a restoration process. So it dawned on me while working in coaching and trainings and moving through some of the blockages and barriers that come up when we're trying to cultivate our leadership, is that we also have metaphorically some of these buried stories. Like we tend not to talk about the hard stuff, right? We tend not to bring in some of our past traumas or not see that they're connected to the way our leadership is showing up today. So again, working through the mechanics of trauma, even if you've taken a course from me in the mechanics of triggers, the component of daylighting, applying this concept of daylighting your own stories often comes up as that way of really acknowledging parts of you that have been buried. Now, in my work with leaders, particularly let's say immigrants, children of immigrants, BIPOC communities, intergenerational healing is requiring us to daylight. It may have been that our parents or grandparents didn't find safety in being able to process through stories or their traumas. So not sharing it, staying safe by not talking about it because it wasn't safe, right? Not allowing those stories to be processed in our parents or grandparents' experiences. It may not have been a safe time to do that, and they may not have had the language or the resources to properly move through some of these traumatic events and stories. And so what happens, it gets passed down to us as their next generation or their descendants, right? And we all know this through epigenetics and whatnot. But what I'm saying here is that it dawned on me because I truly believe nature mirrors our capacity to self-heal. So however nature can self-heal is also mirroring back to us how we as people can apply some of this natural way of healing ourselves. And so daylighting as that practice of breaking up that concrete, breaking up the social norms of staying silent or not talking about what happened. We are more at a place to have language to process through these traumas, to have resources and people to support us, that we may want to consider that daylighting is available to us. All right. So just to recap, that daylighting is an actual ecological restoration practice that gives naturally flowing bodies of water that have been buried with concrete. It gives them back the light of day by exposing it back to daylight. And so what happens in that process too is that you don't actually need to do much after you daylight a creek for all of those buried seeds, those things that were underneath there, to naturally start to germinate. So then what we see is a restored habitat. Saplings start growing, creekside flowers and vegetation, animals start to come back naturally. There's not too much you have to do after you daylight a creek to have it be restored to a lush flowing ecosystem. So take that as another metaphor for you. Whatever practice you decide to do to daylight your stories, your family stories, in order to go into your natural healing process, there's really not much to do after that. That it is really a symbol of your own natural flowing story and your own natural flowing water to now do what it naturally does and goes and flows, right? And personally, I can attest to applying some of these methods of daylighting to my own intergenerational trauma that showed up for me, whether it was like my money stuff or self-worth work that I had to do that stemmed from some of this intergenerational trauma. I applied certain methods of my own form of daylighting in my life and my work. So I want you to consider that this is something that you're ready for. Later this month, I'm going to be having a workshop that really dives into this daylighting process, offer you some activities while we're on the call to process through and connect in community around this intergenerational healing that has proven to be such a transformational process. Yeah, it's a lot of maybe processing and deep work, but we're just really going to introduce the topic and give you some beginning practices and resources, maybe prompts or activities to get your sort of feet wet in the daylighting. So I want to leave it at there. I hope you understand this process of daylighting that I felt was so transformational and made so much sense to me when I realized the connection between this restorative, actual ecological restorative practice that urban ecologists would do, and how that mirrored our power to reclaim some of those stories and what levity it creates. And just imagine being able to see the sunshine after so many periods of darkness, that is healing in itself. So I hope you join me. I'll leave the link to the event in the description, along with other things that you can do to stay involved with my nature-based work. Again, thank you for listening in, and I hope you at least got something out of this introduction to daylighting.